My name is Andrzej Geralt, creator of a game called Chinchilla Run, co-creator of a game called Glitch Dash. After making these games, I decided it was time to take my game development to the next level and make my dream game. Welcome to the first devlog of Tempered Flames. Over the past week or so, I've been debating whether I wanted to make tutorials or not. I also had a bunch of schoolwork to do, and I started work this week, so my time was really limited, but I just couldn't shake the idea of this game out of my head. So I started doing research, which involved watching lots of GDC talks and gaining inspiration. I ended up watching a playthrough of Firewatch and was blown away by the way the game conveyed its narrative. I was also really excited about trying my hand at making a toon shader. My last games were both 2D, and I wanted to make something really unique visually. I thought doing stuff like this was the logical next step, and I wanted to challenge myself artistically. But the biggest problems I had that kept me from starting work on this game was, well, just not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted it to feel really fantastical and atmospheric, and I wanted to tell an impactful story, but I didn't know how to tie all those things together into a fun and cohesive game. So, after many iterations and racking my brain and tons of brainstorming, I ended up with the idea that I have now, a Firewatch-inspired fantasy Metroidvania immersive sim, which will inevitably change as development goes on. Thanks for joining me on this journey of creating this crazy idea. Alright, so I start work today, so not sure how much work I'll be able to get done on the game. I'll be pretty busy today, but hopefully when I get home and finish everything I gotta do, I'll maybe have some time. In the meantime, I'm pretty excited to get started and see how this goes. So, after work, the first thing I did was I created a new scene to begin to test things out, and took a look at my design document in which I had laid out all the features I want to implement into the game. I made a simple character controller and hooked up a first-person camera to it, and built a simple platform world to test movement. So far, the camera control feels right. Once I got that done, I wrote up a simple character movement script, and although I've done this basic setup many times, I watched a few tutorials to make sure I had a really good foundation going in. Player movement is super important after all, and I ended up changing my mind many times. And for now, I'm pretty happy with the result, except the player isn't affected by gravity, which is kind of a big deal. Well, we're already off to an interesting start. I had a few unforeseen problems already, but that's alright. That's the game development life there. So I don't know how much time I'll have tomorrow to work on it. I didn't get too much done today, but let's see how much I can get done tomorrow. I do have class tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. Alright, so today the first thing I had to get done was to get the gravity implemented. That was pretty quick and easy to do, but as you saw, the movement script looks a whole lot different than it did yesterday. Now the next big thing I wanted to get done today was start work on some graphical proof of concept. That is, I wanted to have some visual proof of what this game is going to look like that I could show the world. It's hard to make a devlog and show off gray nothingness, that's pretty boring, and I mean, a huge key point of this game is graphical experimentation. But before doing that, I made some salsa for lunch. So here in Blender, I started to model a few walls, floors, and props that I thought I'd use for this early stage of the game. This is what I spent most of the day on, and in fact probably most hours I logged on development was modeling and texturing these props. In the meantime, I thought I'd tell you all the very broad overview of the actual story I have in mind for this game. So you know how in Firewatch and Prey and those narrative sorts of games, as you find new items, you get access to more of the story? Kind of like a Metroidvania, but with more of a narrative focus than a dungeon crawl focus. That's kind of what I'm going for here. The player will be thrust into a chain of events that will force him to find clues to uncover a plot that could harm those who he cares for the most. The story will take place in a fictional elven city called Gadia Sariel, the Great City of Fire, and the player will have to explore sections of it to discover the truth. It'll also focus on the character development of the main character and the choices he will have to make to get to the bottom of whatever is going on in the city. Anyways, after doing tons of modeling work, I quickly unwrapped the models and threw some simple colors on them, and at this point I was honestly just throwing things together quickly, but I did like the way that the white, red, and gold color scheme turned out. By the way, instead of making my own toon shader, I actually downloaded one that I thought was really good, but I quickly realized that something looked a little off with it. I did a bunch of tests, and honestly I wasn't too happy with the result. Cell shading these environmental interior sections is actually quite a challenge, so I'll have to rethink how I want to go about that. Anyways, here are all the props I made in the game. I think this is a pretty good foretaste of what the visuals of the game are supposed to look like in the end, but I do expect to step up my art game in the coming months. So today I didn't have much time to get anything done. I was at school most of the day working on assignments, but all I did manage to get done was finish up that tutorial, but honestly the tutorial business isn't all that lucrative and it's not much fun to make, to be honest, so unless people really want something like that, I don't think I'll be doing much more tutorials. Plus there are a lot of great ones out there already. So there was still quite a lot of work to get done for the week, but I felt like I had established a pretty good pace and was hitting most of my goals. The last big thing I wanted to get into the game for this week was a toon fire shader, so I spent a bunch of time on that. It took a whole lot more research and I had quite the headache setting it all up. I learned a ton about the shader graph though, and also about how to go about buying good Unity assets, because as I mentioned I wasn't too happy with the toon shader that I downloaded before, so I tried out a few fairly cheap ones from the asset store, only to find out that they didn't actually work with the lightweight render pipeline, only the standard pipeline, so well, there goes 40 bucks, but the more you know, so it was a learning experience. Anyways, after a bit more research and a whole bunch of experimentation, I finally got a good grasp of how the Unity shader graph works. There's a ton of math going on, which is just fine by me, but it's actually really quite rewarding to see the end result reveal itself once you plug in that last node. Essentially what's going on here is Unity is taking these two different sizes of a seamless texture of white circles, making them scroll up, multiplying them together, and then filtering them so that any pixel on the screen can be either completely white or completely black based on a certain transparency level. You do that twice, once for the outer color and once for the inner color, and then bam, you get a beautiful looking cartoon flame. I'm probably going to need to work on this a bit more, but honestly it was super cool to throw together. A decent chunk of the day was spent putting the fire into the game. This came with a couple quick issues I had to work through, especially with the quad I put the fire on actually reflecting light. Whoops, but it's a great start I think. After putting the toon fire into the game, I basically had finished everything I wanted to put into the game this week, but since I did have some extra time, I figured I might as well start to add some actual player abilities into the game. So I made this little cube which will act as a wall. Remember how I said the game would incorporate some Metroidvania elements? Well, essentially the player will be unlocking new abilities that will help him both in combat and also in exploration. One of these abilities will allow the player to get rid of magical barriers in order to pass through them. So I made it so that when the player walks up to such a door and presses E, the door will essentially become a trigger. I'm going to do this differently later on with some cool effects and more game feel elements. If you guys have seen our devlog for Glitch Dash, you know I'm a big fan of particle effects and a healthy dose of screen shake. With all that put in place, I still felt like something was a little bit off. Alright, so it's pretty late on Friday. Overall, I have to say I'm happy with the direction that things are going for this game, even though there's still a few things to work out, obviously, especially with the toon shaders and whatnot. Tomorrow, I'm going on a pilgrimage, which is awesome. Very excited for that, but other than that, pretty good week overall. The pilgrimage involved learning a lot about the Canadian martyrs, especially Saint Jean de Brébeuf and Saint Gabriel Allemand. Now, this pilgrimage and all of the footage in this video occurred before the world dramatically slowed down, and well, this channel is small enough that I don't have demonetization to worry about. I'm talking about the coronavirus quarantines, of course. I think looking at these holy martyrs who enacted heroic virtue can inspire anyone that there is great joy in enduring the arduous. Now, what we're going through right now isn't anywhere near what these men had gone through, but this is our difficulty today. I think it's important to continue doing what we love and to continue especially to look at what we can do for others, and not to panic. Anyways, thanks so much for watching this video and beginning this new game development journey with me. I can promise you that I will keep making this game and bring you content to enjoy, so please leave a like and consider subscribing if you enjoyed it. There are big plans for this game, and as I said in the last clip, something felt off, so stay tuned to see how everything is about to change for this game. I'm super excited to show it to you all. Also, I have videos about how I worked on other games, so check them out too if you're interested. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.